So what should we know? What can we know about what happens in far-right politics when it appears to be in nexus with far-right violence that right now is just pinging off the charts? Joining us now is one of the nation's leading researchers on far-right extremism and white power movements. Kathleen Belew is an associate professor of history at Northwestern University. She's the author of the seminal work in this field, Bring the War Home, the White Power Movement and Paramilitary America. Professor Belew, I really appreciate you making time to be here with us again tonight. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
So one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you tonight is because of the Jacksonville authorities, Jacksonville sheriff saying tonight that they're pretty sure they're going to release the racist manifestos from this shooter in Jacksonville this weekend. They say they want to do that in the interest of transparency. As somebody who's studied these things for a long time, what do you make of that decision? What do you think the impact is, positive or negative, of letting those manifestos see the light of day?
So manifestos are tricky documents because on the one hand, they are deeply coded. They are intended to impart information to future gunmen about target selection, weapon selection, the ins and outs of how to carry out a similar attack. So we see these manifestos ending up in the hands of future attackers. That is a huge problem, and authorities are absolutely right to be cautious in how they circulate. The trick is, though, that without the manifesto, people who study white power violence, militant right violence, are really working with a much smaller amount of information. So right now, were I to say this is a clear incident of white power gun violence, I'm basing that on the choice of the target and the scrawled messages on the barrel of the gun. These are a clear reference to the Christchurch shooting. They're reminiscent of what we saw in that attack. But without the manifesto, we're just working with a lot less information. I tend to think that we might easily release the manifestos to experts who can analyze them and decode without circulating them publicly and get sort of the best of both options.
The Jacksonville sheriff has said publicly that he doesn't think the shooter was part of a larger group, that he acted alone. And as you mentioned, obviously, there's a lot that we still don't know here. But I wanted to ask you about this sort of lone wolf idea, because you've written a lot about this, and I feel like your take on this is important for people to absorb at a popular level. If the shooter did espouse white supremacist beliefs, can you explain why it might be dangerous or even just wrong to dismiss that as a lone wolf event based on the fact that he acted as a single person when he went out shooting?
Absolutely. And this is why we need the manifesto, because when we consume stories about white power violence as single events, as a lone wolf attack, quote unquote, we are consuming them as if they are existing without connection to each other, without an ideological basis. So this is how we get stories about Jacksonville as something separate from Christchurch and Pittsburgh and Buffalo and Charleston. Many of these attacks have not only shared characteristics in the communities that are impacted, but they are all carried out by white power perpetrators who are united through social ties. They're united ideologically. They share information about weapons and tactics and strategies, and they're all working for the same purpose, which, by the way, is not limited only to mass attacks as a strategy, but also exists in precisely this landscape you have just outlined, where it is running into our national politics. It should be discussed in the same breath, not only as other mass attacks, but also in the same breath as the other sort of pings of activity that you have outlined. One way to think about this is that although the scheduling of the Axe Handle Saturday moment for the Trump campaign might have been erroneous, we have many other incidents where Trump's open embrace of this movement has not been erroneous. And I could think, for instance, of the press conference he scheduled in Waco this spring to announce his renewed campaign for 2024. Waco, to many people, may simply signify the Branch Davidian siege and the sort of general anti-federal government sentiment that people take from that. But to white power activists, Waco is a direct reference to the Oklahoma City bombing. It is a call to further violence. So, you know, we can have a discussion about whether or not they meant it this way, but there is plenty of information, plenty of historical precedent, plenty of expert analysis that can tell us what this movement will perceive. And all signs point to increasing acts of violence.
Kathleen Belew, Associate Professor of History at Northwestern, author of Bring the War Home, The White Power Movement and Paramilitary America. Professor Belew, I really appreciate you being here tonight. It's always to talk about something dark, but you always bring some light to the subject. Thank you.
Thank you.